Hi, my name's Delilah, and last Thursday, my sister threw a steaming cup of soup in my face in front of an entire restaurant full of customers. She laughed when it splashed across my chest. Not even a nervous laugh, no. It was sharp, cruel, like she just landed a perfect serve in some twisted little game no one else had agreed to play. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, soaking wet, the sleeve of my work shirt clinging to my arm, the burn on my collarbone pulsing like a second heartbeat. It was beef stew, the chunky kind. And Lana, the golden child, the born performer, the shift manager who still got away with coming in 20 minutes late and blaming traffic, didn't even blink. Oops, she said, smirking at the wide-eyed diners frozen mid-forkful. You might want to mop that up before the health inspector shows up, Delilah. I think someone near table 9 whispered, "Is this a joke?" It wasn't. Not to them, not to me. And just when I thought the humiliation couldn't possibly root itself deeper into my skin, the front door swung open, and he walked in. He. My husband. But no one at the restaurant knew that yet. Rhodes didn't wear power the way most men did. He didn't flaunt it. He wore it like a well-fitted coat. Quiet. Exact. Intimidating only if you had something to hide. He didn't look at me first. That's what got me. He looked at Lana, then at the staff, then slowly across the open dining area, where the awkward tension now sat between plates of overcooked salmon and complimentary bread baskets. Then, he spoke. "Who's in charge?" Lana stepped forward like she'd rehearsed it. "That would be me." "Perfect," he said, pulling out a small black folder from the inner pocket of his coat. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." There was a beat. Then the silence cracked. "What the hell are you talking about?" Lana scoffed, eyes darting to our stunned co-workers, her voice rising like a kettle about to boil. "You can't fire me. Who even are you?" Rhodes turned to the assistant manager, Jason, who had dropped his iPad and was now fumbling to pick it up. "Jason, you'll receive a notice shortly. You're to suspend all service operations within the next 30 minutes. Staff will be compensated for the day. Guests, reimbursed." Lana's face was colorless now. "Wait, who the hell do you think you are?" That's when he finally looked at me. And suddenly, I didn't feel like a waitress anymore. I felt like someone who'd been seen. "I'm her husband," he said, eyes not leaving mine. "And the silent majority shareholder of this chain." The gasp that followed felt like a physical wave. And just like that, every table, every stare, every snide whisper I'd ever overheard about me being the quiet sister, or the one who never speaks up, collapsed under the weight of that sentence. My sister tried to laugh again, but it didn't come out right. "You're kidding," she snapped. "You married her? Her?" And I wanted to say something. I did. I wanted to burn the whole place down with one perfect sentence. But I didn't have to, because Rhodes already had. That moment? It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was the first time in years someone had picked me, not because I was convenient, not because I was silent, but because I was enough. And not just anyone, him. Still, if you're thinking this is where I rode off into a perfect sunset with my billionaire husband and never looked back, you're wrong. That moment was the match. But this fire? It had been building for years. The soup was just the beginning. See, you don't end up being the invisible sibling without a long, patient history of being seen just enough to be used, but never enough to be chosen. And you definitely don't survive Lana without knowing how to absorb a hit without flinching. But even I had a breaking point. And when the world finally caught a glimpse of who Lana really was, it wasn't because I exposed her. It was because she finally slipped. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't been preparing for this moment my whole life. Have you ever had someone laugh while you were burning? The smell of bleach and overcooked spaghetti always takes me back to that house. The one with the creaky hallway, the thermostat that somehow never worked for my room, and the wall calendar where only my sister's accomplishments were ever marked in gold. We grew up in a two-bedroom rental, with walls so thin, I could hear Lana's voice from anywhere in the house, which meant I could hear her being praised long before I knew what being heard actually felt like. Lana made the honor roll again, Mom would say through the kitchen, her voice lilting, proud. We should frame it. No one asked about my science fair project that day, the one I built from scratch using cardboard and a flashlight from the garage. It sat in the back of my room with a crooked second-place ribbon taped to the side. That was the first time I realized love had favorites, and favoritism had a tone. It sounded like applause that never quite made it to your name. You're just more self-sufficient, my mom used to say, like it was a compliment. That line always came up when I asked questions that made her uncomfortable, like when Lana got a brand new MacBook for her birthday, and I got a clearance sweater 2 sizes too big. Or when Lana crashed the car she wasn't supposed to be driving, and my parents decided I should lose my weekend job to help with gas. It's not about being unfair, Dad said, shoveling rice into his mouth. It's about doing what's best for the family. You mean what's best for Lana? I muttered once, and that was the first time he slapped the table hard enough to rattle the salt shaker. He didn't look at me. He just chewed, like I was static in the background. The year I got into Carnegie, the only one in my class who did, I remember staring at that acceptance email with tears blurring the screen. Not from joy, from dread, because I knew I couldn't go. We were already tight on funds, according to Mom. Lana had just been accepted to some private business program in Europe, and apparently it was her dream. She needs it more, Mom said, folding laundry with clinical precision. You'll find another path. So I turned down the scholarship, and when I tried to talk to my guidance counselor about it, Mom showed up to the school unannounced and told her I was confused and overreacting. I wasn't confused. I was erased, piece by piece, until I was small enough to fit into the shadows of Lana's spotlight without casting one of my own. One summer, I found Lana in my room. She wasn't even pretending to snoop. She was sitting on my bed, reading my journal out loud to her friend on speakerphone. I froze in the doorway, heart punching my ribs. She looked up, laughed, and said, "God, you're so dramatic." I stood there, too stunned to speak, until she got up and walked past me like I didn't exist. "You should really lock your door," she said over her shoulder. The door that didn't have a lock. The room that wasn't really mine. That night, I tore the journal into pieces and flushed it down the toilet, 2 pages at a time. Because in that house, your voice was a liability, especially if it made people uncomfortable. The day I left home wasn't cinematic. No thunderstorm, no suitcase at the curb. Just Lana accusing me of stealing her tip money. Again. Even though I had receipts showing I'd clocked out an hour before it went missing. She stood there, arms crossed, in that apron she barely washed, and said, "It's just money. Why are you so defensive unless you're guilty?" "And my mom?" She nodded, like that made sense. "You do spend a lot of time near the register," she added. I had $83 in my wallet, 2 protein bars, and a bus pass. So I walked. Didn't slam the door. Didn't even say goodbye. I just shut it behind me. Not because I was weak, but because I finally understood what it meant to stop begging for a seat at a table that was never set for you. I slept in a friend's laundry room for 3 weeks. Then I moved in with a woman named Jenna, someone I met through a community board at the library. She was kind, barely knew me, but gave me a cot and a drawer to call my own. "You're quieter than my cat," she said one night, "but I think you've got some fire under all that ash." She was right. I was just waiting for the right match. It was at the corner diner, 2 years later, that I met Rhodes. He sat in the back booth every Thursday, always alone, always polite, never checked his phone during meals. I didn't notice him at first, but he noticed me. "Do you always take the late shifts?" he asked one night as I refilled his coffee. I nodded. "Pays better, and fewer people tell you to smile." He didn't laugh, but he did smile, just once. the kind that said he understood something most people didn't. I didn't know then that he owned the real estate firm leasing half the businesses on the block, or that he'd walked away from a high-profile merger to start from scratch after a betrayal that nearly bankrupted him. He never led with power, he led with presence, and when he asked me what I wanted most in the world, I told him the truth. To never have to explain my worth again. He didn't flinch. He just said, "Let's start there." So yeah, when he walked into that restaurant, hours after my sister humiliated me in public, he wasn't there to play hero. He was there because we'd made a pact. No more staying silent in rooms that tried to shame us. And if Lana thought the soup was the worst she'd ever do to me, she hadn't read the fine print of my patience. Because buried under years of silence were records. Proof. Things she said when she thought I wasn't listening. And the moment she tried to push harder, she was going to slip. And this time, I'd be ready. The first time I met Rhodes in daylight, he was holding a worn paperback copy of Slaughterhouse-Five and asking if we had oat milk. We didn't. We never did. The owner thought alternative milk was a scam from California. I remember apologizing, bracing for that eye roll customers always gave when they realized this place wasn't a hipster haven. But instead, he looked up at me and said, "No worries. Life's full of small disappointments." That could have been sarcastic, but it wasn't. His voice didn't carry irony, just understanding. I shrugged, trying to smile. "I'll throw in an extra shot. House peace offering." He nodded once. Sounds like forgiveness to me. And just like that, something shifted. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink myself to be tolerated. He saw me, and not through the foggy lens of family obligation or pity. Just me. And that scared me. Because I'd spent years living in the spaces between people. The go-to helper. The listener. The cushion for Lana's emotional collapses, Mom's guilt spirals, Dad's silent treatments. But Rhodes? He didn't lean on me. He stood with me. By the third Thursday, we were unofficially friends. By the sixth, he started staying after hours, helping me stack chairs and refill the ketchup caddies while we talked about anything but our families. His hands moved with quiet precision, like a man who'd built things before, then had them taken. "You know," he said once, aligning napkin dispensers like chess pieces, "I used to believe people only hurt others out of ignorance, like they didn't mean to. They just didn't know better." I glanced up from the mop bucket. "And now? Now, I think some people hurt you because they know better. Because they know exactly where it lands." I didn't answer. But that sentence never left me. It was one night after my shift, a rare evening when it wasn't raining, when I found Rhodes sitting on the curb outside the diner. His blazer was folded over his lap, his sleeves rolled up, and his phone screen lit up his jawline in blue. He looked up, quietly embarrassed. "Didn't want to drive." "Trouble?" I asked, settling beside him. He paused. "My ex. She's trying to take the company, again. Claims I abandoned my obligations when I stepped back." I nodded slowly. "Let me guess. She wants your silence more than your absence." He turned, studying me. "That sounds personal." I exhaled. "Yeah, well, when you're born into a house where apologies are rationed, you get good at decoding intentions." That was the first time I told him about Lana, about how she once forged my signature on a summer internship form, getting me blacklisted from a nonprofit I'd worked 2 years to get into. How when I confronted her, she told Mom I'd been stealing from her, again, and how Mom believed her, again. Rhodes didn't speak for a while. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key. "Back up to my apartment," he said, "in case you ever need a door that closes properly." I stared at it. "Why?" I asked. "Because I know what it's like to sleep in spaces that weren't built for you." That night, I didn't take the key, but I did stop pretending I didn't want more than a quiet life. 6 months later, I married him in a courthouse with no guests, no flowers, and a judge who mispronounced my name. And it was perfect, because for the first time, no one interrupted me. No one told me I was being extra for asking to be seen. He didn't post about it. Neither did I. We went out for sandwiches afterward and watched strangers dance to a jazz trio in a park. I wore a denim jacket and mascara. He wore that same blue shirt he spilled espresso on in week 4 of meeting me, and just like that, we built something sacred, because no one else could touch it. But secrets don't stay secret when you marry a man with a boardroom full of enemies and a sister like Lana breathing down your neck. She started asking questions. Where are you living now? Why do you always have nice shoes when you're still on server wages? Who's texting you from a 919 number with no name? I shrugged her off. Played it dumb. But she knew something had shifted, that the version of Delilah who always made room for her had stiffened. What she didn't know was that Rhodes had quietly bought into the restaurant chain 3 months earlier because he wanted me to have a say in the place that once humiliated me. I don't want to own it, I told him, alarmed. You won't, he said. You'll just influence what you've earned the right to change. 2 weeks before the soup incident, Lana cornered me in the staff room. Her eyes were sharp, lips tight with suspicion. You're acting different, she hissed. What are you hiding? Nothing, I replied, folding napkins like my life depended on it. She leaned in. People like you don't just get lucky, Delilah. You're too plain, too quiet. No one chooses girls like you unless they want something. And maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the years. But something inside me snapped. I stood up, looked her dead in the eye, and said, maybe someone finally wanted a woman who doesn't perform every second of the day. Her jaw clenched. Don't talk to me like we're equals. I smiled, quiet. You're right, we're not. And that was when I knew it was coming. She would find a way to punish me. Because people like Lana don't just want the spotlight. They want the power to decide who doesn't get one. She never feared losing control, until I stopped playing small. There's a certain silence that only happens at a family dinner table. It's not the kind that comes from peace or contentment. It's the kind that's heavy, brittle, the kind you can chew on between bites of roast beef and force smiles. The last time I sat at my mother's table, the china was the same. The blue and white set passed down from her grandmother that we only used for good occasions. Apparently, my sister's return from a 3-day leadership retreat counted as one. My college scholarship hadn't. I just think it's inspiring, Mom said, pouring sweet tea into crystal glasses. How Lana leads her peers with such natural confidence. She's always had presence, added Aunt Claire, the kind of woman who wore shoulder pads like armor. Lana smiled modestly, as if she wasn't the one who'd organized this dinner herself. As if she hadn't whispered to me that afternoon, "Don't wear that beige top. It washes you out in photos." And I, like I always did, said nothing. I played the role I'd memorized. Supportive, self-contained, strategically invisible. Until dessert. Because dessert was when it finally broke. You still working at that cafe? Aunt Claire asked, slicing into the lemon pie with too much force. Before I could answer, Lana chimed in. She is, she said, licking whipped cream off her fork. Delilah's always been great with, simple routines. Simple routines. I swallowed a laugh that tasted like metal. I'm managing inventory now, I said, and developing the new brunch menu. We just got written up in the local table. Oh? Mom tilted her head. I didn't know they featured casual dining. They do, I said evenly. We were in the best-kept secrets list. Dad cleared his throat. Lana's firm is expanding to Dallas next quarter. They want her to head the launch. Of course they did. And here was the kicker. Lana had never even finished her degree. But she had connections, a magnetic voice, a resume built on opportunities that quietly fell from other people's hands into hers. Mine included. After dinner, while everyone moved into the living room for coffee and compliments, I stayed back to help clear the table. That's when I noticed it. A letter, tucked halfway under a napkin holder on the kitchen counter. The edge of an official seal caught my eye. It was addressed to me, but opened. Inside, folded neatly, was a formal letter of recommendation from one of my former instructors, the kind of document you needed to apply for specialized culinary grants, ones that could change everything. I'd asked him to mail it to my home address. Apparently, it never made it to me. I held the letter in my hand like it was made of glass. Then I heard her voice behind me. "Oh," Lana said, feigning surprise. "I thought you didn't want to apply anymore." She blinked, then shrugged. "It was just sitting there. And anyway, Mom said you weren't pursuing that path anymore." "You told her that," I said quietly. She smiled, that razor-thin grin. "Honestly, Delilah, it's not like you were going to win the grant. They look for vision. You're consistent, not bold." It took everything in me not to scream. Instead, I folded the letter, slid it into my purse, and said, "You're right. I'm not bold." She didn't catch the tone. That's the thing about people like Lana. They always mistake quiet for submission. But I'd learned that silence isn't the absence of strength, it's the storage space for it, and mine was full. Later that night, I went back to my apartment and unpacked every document Lana had ever brushed past. Emails she forwarded, by mistake, to the wrong address. Reminders she forgot to send. My college transcripts she once used as leverage to get our parents to co-sign her lease. I started building something, quietly, carefully. A timeline, a pattern, a case. Not for court, not yet, but for me. So that when I started to question whether I was crazy, I could look at it all and remember. It wasn't in my head. It was in her hands. Weeks passed. Rhodes noticed the shift before I admitted anything. "You sleep with your jaw clenched," he said one morning. "Do I?" He nodded. "Like you're biting the inside of a lie." I wanted to tell him everything. About the letter, about the years, about how I'd spent my whole life being turned into an accessory to Lana's narrative. But all I said was, "I think I need to visit my mother." He watched me, waiting. "Not to fix anything," I added. "To confirm what I already know." He didn't ask what that was. He just reached for my hand and said, "I'll keep the car running." When I got there, Mom was in the backyard garden, trimming rose bushes like they'd personally wronged her. She didn't look up. "I need to ask you something," I said. Snip. "Did you know Lana intercepted my grant paperwork?" Snip. "Did you give her permission to open my mail?" Silence. Then, finally, "Delilah, you've always been so sensitive. Lana just acts quickly. That's how the world works." I felt something behind my ribs crack. "How the world works," I repeated. "She's strategic," Mom said. "You've always been emotional. That's not a crime." "No," I said, "but fraud is." Her pruning shears stopped midair. "I didn't report it," I added, "but I documented it, just so we're clear." That was the last conversation I had with my mother for 6 months. I didn't plan on going back to the restaurant that day, but something in my gut, some old, inherited instinct that warned me when Lana was about to strike, pushed me out the door and into a cab before I could reason myself out of it. The place was nearly empty when I got there. It was between lunch and dinner rush, the lights dimmed, the air tinged with fryer oil and lemon-scented cleaner. Familiar, but tense. Jason, the assistant manager, was behind the counter, flipping through a clipboard with too much concentration for someone who usually coasted through shifts with earbuds in. He didn't see me until I was standing a foot away. "Delilah!" He blinked, startled. "I thought you were off today." "I was," I said, "but something told me to check in." His gaze shifted. Nervous. Guilt laced through the air like burnt toast. "What's that?" I nodded toward the clipboard. "Oh, just, paperwork. New contracts." "What kind of contracts?" He scratched the back of his neck. "You should probably ask Lana. She said you'd already approved the expansion clause." My blood turned to slush. "Expansion clause?" Jason flipped to a page and turned it toward me. "Yeah, the one with your signature right here. It was my name, in the same looping cursive I used when I was 17. Neat, careful, forged. I felt the room tilt, ever so slightly. She gave me the file 2 days ago, Jason added, his voice faltering. Said you'd agreed to transfer your share of voting rights for the next 6 months while you were focusing on your mental health. I stared at him, ice forming under my skin. Did anyone else sign off on this? She said Rhodes did. I didn't ask. My hands clenched, nails digging into the heel of my palm. Of course she would say that, and of course Jason wouldn't question her. Lana had always had this air of untouchable authority, even when she was lying through her perfect, whitening-stripped teeth. I took the clipboard from his hands and flipped through the rest. There it was, an addendum buried in legal jargon, an agreement to grant Lana operational authority over my stake in the chain. Effective immediately. There were 2 signatures at the bottom, mine and Rhodes's. But neither were real, and that's when I understood something. Lana had always manipulated people, but this wasn't just manipulation. This was fraud. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I called Rhodes. Calm. Controlled. She forged your name too, I said. He was quiet for a moment. I figured. What do you mean? She left a message with my assistant yesterday, he replied. Said she wanted to streamline communication now that I was no longer involved in daily decisions. And you didn't tell me? I wanted to see how far she'd go, and now we know. There was no anger in his voice, only calculation, and a kind of grim resolve that made my spine straighten. She committed a felony, I said. Yes, he replied, and she'll deny it until the moment the cuffs click. That night, I went to Lana's condo, not to yell, not to fight, to watch her lie in real time. She opened the door wearing a satin robe and a face mask, like she hadn't just tried to steal a company. Oh, she said, blinking. Didn't expect you. I figured. She stepped aside. I entered. You want wine? I want the truth. She tensed. Just slightly. About? I pulled the forged documents from my bag and laid them on her granite island. She stared at them for a beat, then let out a soft laugh. This again? This isn't petty. This is criminal. Her smile vanished. Don't be dramatic, Delilah. You forged 2 signatures. You tried to transfer power without consent. That's identity fraud, wire fraud. I'm guessing your attorney didn't look these over, because I doubt even you could spin this in court. Her jaw tightened. You wouldn't go to court. I didn't blink. Wouldn't I? She looked at me then, truly looked, like she was seeing me not as the doormat she'd been polishing her shoes on for decades, but as someone standing on solid ground with her own storm behind her. And that scared her. I made this place, she hissed. You don't deserve it just because you got lucky and married someone with a fat checkbook. I stepped closer, voice calm, controlled. I didn't get lucky, Lana. I got out, and that's what terrifies you. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. I turned to leave, then paused. You have 72 hours to retract the paperwork. I already filed a preliminary report with the SEC. Her mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Back in the car, Rhodes was waiting. You okay? He asked. I'm done being afraid of her, I said. He reached over and took my hand, squeezing once. She never thought you'd leave the cage, he said. I looked out the window, where Lana's perfect building loomed. She built the cage, I murmured, and I let her decorate it. But not anymore. Because now I had the key, and the proof. And this time, when I walked away, I took the floor plan with me. What's louder than revenge? Proof in ink. When you grow up in a family that buries secrets beneath politeness, you learn how to listen for the things people don't say. Like the way Lana's voice got a little too calm when she was lying. Or how Mom's smile tightened by a millimeter every time she had to acknowledge my existence in public. But silence doesn't mean stillness. Sometimes it's the sound of something loading. And that week, everything loaded. It started with an anonymous email to my work inbox. No subject, no sender. Just a single audio file titled, Wednesday meeting all 3 p.m. .wave. I almost deleted it, thought it was spam. Then something in me, call it intuition, call it survival instinct, told me to plug in my headphones. I hit play, and there it was. Lana's voice. You really think she's stable enough to handle equity? Please. She spiraled when she lost that college grant. I mean, it's not like she's ever been leadership material. She's fragile. That's why I stepped in. Silence. Then a man's voice I didn't recognize. So the signature was? A necessity, Lana said. Her tone clipped. She would have slowed everything down. I know my sister. She freezes under pressure. She'll thank me when the business scales. The audio clicked off. I stared at my screen, heart pounding. She didn't just forge signatures. She weaponized my mental health. To a room of investors. To justify illegal control. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she didn't care. That was the moment I stopped wanting accountability. I wanted exposure. Because people like Lana didn't fear consequences. They feared losing their audience. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I called my mother. The line rang 5 times before she answered. Her voice carried the same strained cheer she reserved for holiday phone calls. Delilah, this is a surprise. Hi, Mom, do you have a minute? A pause. Of course, honey. I played the audio. No preface, no explanation. Just 92 seconds of pure, polished cruelty. When it ended, she didn't say anything. I waited. Then finally, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. That was it. That was all she had. My throat tightened. She forged legal documents. She lied to investors. She framed me as mentally unstable, and you think she didn't mean it? Her voice cracked barely. You've always been the stronger one. Lana she's had to work harder for approval. I almost laughed. She stole approval, Mom. She rewrote my story and sold it to people who would have believed in me if they'd ever had the chance to hear me speak. No answer. Just a hollow sort of guilt I didn't have time for anymore. I hung up. The next day, Rhodes sent the file, anonymously as requested, to the company's ethics committee, then again to the shareholders board, and finally to Lana's primary investor group, along with a brief summary of the forged documents and timestamps. No threats, no lawsuits, just evidence. He looked at me across the breakfast table that morning, his voice steady. This won't be clean, he warned. She'll drag it through every back room and PR spin machine she can find. I don't need it to be clean, I said. I need it to be public. He nodded. Then we're ready. What I didn't expect was how fast the unraveling would begin. Lana didn't know about the email yet when she walked into the restaurant that Friday. She was in full armor, tailored blazer, red lipstick, phone glued to her hand. But something in the staff's gaze had shifted. Jason avoided eye contact. The kitchen crew stiffened when she gave orders. Then the owner came out from the back. Not Rhodes. He kept his involvement out of sight. But Darren, the day-to-day operator, who now knew exactly whose name was faked next to his on a document. We need to talk, he said quietly, leading her to the back office. I watched through the slatted glass. Her face froze. The file was already printed on the desk. She knew. She spun back to look through the blinds, caught my eye, and for the first time in years, she looked scared. Not angry, not smug. Scared. I didn't flinch, just lifted my chin, held her gaze. Then walked away. The fallout came in waves. One investor pulled out. The press caught wind of internal misconduct. HR launched an internal audit. And Lana? Lana went dark. No social posts, no interviews, no statements. Which for her was as loud as a confession. It wasn't vindication. It wasn't closure. But it was a crack in the fortress she'd built on my silence. And for the first time, I didn't want to rebuild anything with her. I just wanted out. Not as a victim, or even as a victor. Just as me. And that would be enough. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a mic, just the right room to echo in. The fallout didn't end with fireworks. No apology, no breakdown, just silence. Lana disappeared from every room she once dominated. No more calls, no more control. And honestly, that was enough. I visited my mother one last time. She opened the door slowly, like she knew why I'd come, but hoped I wouldn't say it. "I'm not angry," I told her, "but I'm done." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't stop me. Maybe for the first time, she understood this wasn't rebellion. It was release. I left without looking back. Weeks passed. I didn't chase headlines. I didn't reply to curious messages. I booked a flight with Rhodes, no destination on the return. In a quiet town, I opened a small cafe. Nothing fancy, no press. But the first customer said, "Feels peaceful in here." I smiled. That's the point. Lana didn't come back. She didn't need to. Because I was no longer standing in her shadow. I'd walked out of it. And this time, I didn't bring it with me. Sometimes the strongest ending is no response at all. Looking back, I used to think walking away was weakness, that leaving family behind meant failure. But sometimes strength is the quiet decision to stop bleeding for people who keep handing you knives. What I learned is simple. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep the peace. Your story matters. Your voice matters, even when they try to erase it. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you were taught to love no matter what? What did it cost you? And what did it set you free from? If this story hit home for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment and tell me how this story made you feel, or even what you'd do in Delilah's shoes. And hey, if you felt even one moment of truth in this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps share more real, raw, and honest stories like this one.